You're standing in the pet food aisle, bag in hand, reading the ingredient list like you always do. Chicken is listed first. Real chicken. You feel good about this. You put it in your cart. Here's the part nobody tells you: that chicken listed first, it weighed that much before it was cooked. After processing, it drops so far down the list it might as well be a footnote. And the brand you've trusted for years, the one with the happy dog on the bag, might be the worst offender of all. This is what legal label manipulation actually looks like. If you watched our last video on dog food lies, you already know that pet food marketing is one of the most deceptive spaces in consumer products. We covered the big picture, the buzzwords, the front-of-bag illusions, the celebrity endorsements that mean absolutely nothing about what's actually inside the bag. But today, we are going deeper. We're talking about the ingredient list itself, the fine print, the part you actually flip the bag over to read, thinking it is the honest section. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The ingredient list is where some of the most sophisticated manipulation happens, and it is all completely legal. Manufacturers know exactly what they are doing. They know you are reading it, and they've designed it to give you just enough reassurance to close the sale without ever actually lying to you. That's the genius of it, and the danger. By the end of this video, you are going to know exactly how to read past the manipulation. You'll understand the specific tactics used to make low-quality food look premium, why some ingredients that sound terrible are actually fine, and why some ingredients that sound incredible are almost meaningless. This isn't about fear. It's about giving you the actual literacy to make the best decision for your dog. Let us get into it. Let us start with a tactic that catches almost everyone, and it is the one we teased in the hook. It's called ingredient splitting, and it is the single most effective legal trick in pet food manufacturing. Here's how it works. Ingredients on a pet food label are listed by weight, from heaviest to lightest, before cooking. That part most people know. So manufacturers know that if they want something to appear further down the list, say, a cheap carbohydrate filler, they can split it into multiple forms. Instead of listing corn as one ingredient, they list corn flour, corn gluten meal, and ground corn as 3 separate entries. Each one individually weighs less than the meat protein, so the meat stays at the top. But add those 3 corn derivatives together and they absolutely outweigh the protein. Your dog's food is primarily corn. The label told you chicken was first. Both things are true, and that is the game. This isn't speculation. This is a documented practice that the Association of American Feed Control Officials, AAFCO, technically discourages but does not explicitly prohibit. So it continues. And it is not just corn. You'll see it with potatoes, peas, lentils, and wheat. If you spot 3 or 4 variations of the same base ingredient scattered through the list, that's a red flag. That food is likely built around that cheap filler, not the protein at the top. Short start here's something that will change how you read every dog food label forever. It's called ingredient splitting. Say a manufacturer wants corn to be the main ingredient because it is cheap, but they also know you'll reject any food where corn is listed first. So instead of one entry that says corn, they split it into 3: corn flour, corn gluten meal, and ground corn. 3 separate ingredients, each one lighter than the chicken listed at the top. But add all 3 together. They outweigh everything else in the bag. Your dog's food is mostly corn. The label said chicken first. And neither of those statements is technically a lie. That's ingredient splitting. And it is completely legal. Short end. Now let us talk about the moisture manipulation that makes the chicken problem so much worse than people realize. When a label says chicken, not chicken meal, just chicken, that's fresh or frozen chicken going into the mix. And fresh chicken is about 70 to 75% water by weight. So yes, it is heavy before processing, which is why it earns that top spot on the list. But once the food is cooked and moisture is driven out, that chicken shrinks dramatically. Some estimates suggest it loses up to 80% of its weight during processing. So the ingredient that seemed dominant, it's now a fraction of what it appeared to be. Contrast that with chicken meal. chicken meal has already been rendered. The moisture has been removed before it is weighed and listed. What you are getting is concentrated protein. Pound for pound, chicken meal actually delivers more protein per gram than fresh chicken in a dry kibble context. But here's the branding problem. Meal sounds processed. It sounds cheap. So manufacturers who use fresh chicken know it photographs better on the bag, sounds better in the marketing, and sits at the top of the list with authority, even when it is delivering less actual protein than meal would. Some premium brands are genuinely using high volumes of fresh chicken in ways that work well with their formulation. But many are leaning on the optics. You deserve to know the difference. Let us move into the world of vague ingredient names, because this is where the label stops looking deceptive and starts looking almost academic. And that's intentional. You'll see things like meat and bone meal, animal digest, or poultry byproduct meal. These sound alarming, and the internet has made them sound like something scraped off a slaughterhouse floor. The truth is more nuanced. Poultry byproducts include organ meats, liver, kidneys, lungs, which are actually nutrient-dense and dogs have evolved to thrive on. In the wild, when a dog's ancestor made a kill, the organs went first. The muscle meat was secondary, so byproducts aren't inherently bad. The problem is the word poultry instead of chicken or turkey. It's vague. It could be any bird. It gives manufacturers flexibility to swap sources based on whatever's cheapest that week, with no obligation to tell you. That inconsistency matters for dogs with sensitivities. If your dog has a reaction and you are trying to figure out the protein source, good luck. It changed without notice, and the label didn't have to update. Specific named sources like chicken byproduct meal are actually more transparent than poultry meal, even though they both contain the word that sounds scary. This is the counterintuitive part of reading labels. The scarier-sounding specific term is often better than the cleaner-sounding vague one. Animal digest is another one. It's used as a flavor enhancer, essentially a liquid spray applied to kibble to make it palatable. The source animal is unspecified. It's not a primary protein source, so it is not contributing meaningfully to nutrition, but it is contributing to flavor acceptability, which is why dogs who eat otherwise low-quality food still eat it enthusiastically. Palatability and nutrition are not the same thing, and manufacturers absolutely know your dog's enthusiasm is one of the primary ways you judge whether a food is working. Now let us talk about the ingredients that get added to the label to impress you, not to feed your dog. Think about blueberries. You see blueberries on an ingredient list, and it genuinely makes you feel better about the food. And blueberries are great antioxidants, vitamins, fiber. But look where they appear on the list. They're almost always near the very bottom, after the preservatives, after the added vitamins, after everything. At that position, the quantity is so small it is nutritionally irrelevant. It might be a handful of blueberries across an entire batch of hundreds of pounds of food, but it earns a call-out on the front of the bag. With real blueberries, and you feel reassured. The same is true for fancy-sounding additions like dried kelp, rosemary extract, dried chicory root, and the seemingly endless parade of superfoods that appear at the bottom of the list. These are often present in what the industry calls label decoration quantities, enough to list, not enough to matter. And rosemary extract specifically shows up not as a nutritional addition, but as a natural preservative, which is fine. But it is often positioned in marketing language as a health-forward ingredient when its function is preservation. Short start, you know what with real blueberries on a dog food bag actually means. It means there are enough blueberries in that entire massive batch of food to legally write the word blueberries on the label. We're talking trace amounts, nutritionally irrelevant. But it is sitting right there on the front of the bag next to a picture of fresh fruit, and it works. Because you see it, you feel better, and you buy the food. This is called label decoration. Fancy ingredients listed at the very bottom of an ingredient list in quantities so small they do nothing for your dog. Blueberries, dried kelp, rosemary, chicory root. If they are in the last third of that ingredient list, They are marketing, not nutrition. Your dog deserves better than a garnish, short end. Let us get into synthetic vitamins and the complete and balanced claim, because this is one of the most misunderstood parts of the label. AAFCO sets nutritional standards for dog food. When a food says complete and balanced, it means it meets those minimum standards, either through feeding trials or through nutrient analysis. That sounds reassuring. But here's the thing. A food can be nutritionally complete on paper while being built almost entirely on poor quality ingredients, because the deficiencies are filled in at the end with a synthetic vitamin and mineral premix. Look for that premix. It usually shows up as a long string of chemical-sounding names near the bottom of the list. Zinc sulfate, niacin supplement, thiamine mononitrate, and so on. Every commercial dog food has some version of this, including good ones. But in lower quality foods, that premix is doing enormous heavy lifting because the whole food ingredients themselves are providing minimal nutrition. The complete and balanced label tells you the math works out. It doesn't tell you how elegantly or how naturally that math was achieved. Now, let us talk about what a genuinely better ingredient list actually looks like, not perfect, because perfect is a marketing myth, but better. You want to see a named protein source. Chicken, salmon, beef, lamb, turkey, in the first 1 or 2 positions. You want to see a named meal version of that same protein reasonably high on the list, because that confirms actual protein density, not just pre-cooking water weight. You want limited ingredient splitting. If you see 3 or 4 versions of the same grain or legumes scattered through the list, that's the red flag we talked about. You want to see vegetables and whole food sources that are genuinely high on the list, not decorative trace additions. And you want the synthetic vitamin and mineral premix, because again, all foods have it, but you want it to be supplementing nutrition, not replacing it. Here's the hardest part of all of this. Even a good ingredient list doesn't guarantee a good food. Processing temperatures, sourcing quality, batch consistency, and manufacturing standards all matter enormously, and none of that information is on the label. 2 foods with nearly identical ingredient lists can produce very different health outcomes depending on how they were made. This is why looking at long-term outcomes for your dog matters as much as label reading. Coat quality, energy levels, stool consistency, weight management over time. Your dog's body gives you feedback that the bag never will. So what do you actually do with all of this? You stop reading the front of the bag entirely. The front is marketing. You flip to the back. You read the ingredient list with these specific questions in mind. What is the first named protein source? Is there a named meal version of it? Can I spot ingredient splitting happening with any filler? How far down does the first vegetable or whole food appear? Where does the vitamin premix start? And are there any vague species nonspecific proteins like poultry or meat that leave room for inconsistency? None of this requires a chemistry degree. It requires knowing the game is being played, and now you do. If this changed the way you think about your dog's food, sit with that for a moment. Then do one thing. Flip over the bag that's in your house right now and read that ingredient list with fresh eyes. Apply what you just learned. Look for the splitting. Look for the moisture trick with fresh versus meal proteins. Look for where the real vegetables actually fall on that list. You might be surprised. You might be relieved. Either way, you'll know more than most dog owners ever will. And if you want to keep going deeper on this, our next video covers how to actually compare 2 foods side by side, beyond the ingredient list, into guaranteed analysis, and what those numbers really mean for your dog's specific needs. We'll see you there. Thanks for watching. If you loved this video, scan the QR code on the screen right now to subscribe and join the Pawsome Life family. Give your dog a belly rub for us, and we will see you in the next video.